Okay, we're going to call, welcome to the February 28th or February 18th board meeting. We're going to call the meeting to order. Mike, can you take roll?
Mr. Benford.
Here.
Ms. Crooked.
Here.
Ms. Hogue.
Here.
Ms. Hogartle.
Here.
Ms. Kuttner.
Here.
Ms. Paoli.
Here.
Mr. Vecchio.
Here.
Vice President Seidel.
Here.
And President Sangillo.
Here. Okay, let's rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God,
with liberty and justice for all. All right. Mike, would you read us the statement concerning open public meetings?
Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the Superintendent of Schools in the following manner. On January 15th, 2021, notice of this meeting was posted on the interior of the school administration offices, 1 Lincoln Avenue, Haddonfield. Written notice was submitted and filed with the Haddonfield Borough Clerk, and notices were faxed to the Courier Post and mailed to the Retrospect newspaper.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Mike is going to introduce us to Robin Verso. Mike, you want to tell us just who Rob is and
Sure.
what he's going to present us with tonight?
So Robin Verso is our district auditor. He performs our annual audit for the district. And this is for the fiscal year 2019-2020. So Rob's going to go over financial position of the district as of June 30th, 2020. So go ahead, Rob.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I'd like to go over the financial position, where we stand as of June 30th, 2020. Okay, got on the screen now, that's good. We took in this year in revenues under tax levy, $36,737,000. Tuition revenue, $274,000. Miscellaneous revenue, $320,000. State aid, $1,964,144. Total revenue, $39,296,439. We expended in the same period, $37,480,349 for a net gain in operations of $1,816,090. We also had a couple of extra items this year. We have a transfer from the capital projects funds for 2 old SDA projects that we closed out. We had fund balance in those projects, and we moved that over to the capital projects. We also had a transfer to the capital projects fund for the referendum of $605,585. And that was to take care of the referendum. We took care of $1 million of that last year, and this was the remaining piece. So the capital projects fund is now totally closed for all the old projects and for the referendum. We started the year with a fund balance of $7,076,190. We're ending with a fund balance of $8,367,852. That amount is further defined right below. What makes that up? We have excess surplus of $591,913. That's the amount that must be put in the 21-22 budget, the minimum amount. We have reserve for encumbrances, $356,944. Those are open orders that were ordered and not the goods not received prior to year end. That included, I think it was weight equipment, gym weight room equipment, and a bus. They were the 2 main items of that. Our capital reserve is $4,073,391. Of that amount, we used $2,800,000 in the 2021 budget. The maintenance reserve is $1,770,282,000. And we used a little bit of that too. We had a shortfall, the state cut our aid in the 21-22 budget. And we were using $180,481 of that. The next item is designated for subsequent years expenditures. That's $723,280. That's the amount that's placed in the 2021 budget. And then we have finally unreserved surplus, $852,042, totaling the $8,367,852. The calculation, the state calculation for the unreserved surplus is our expenditures on the bottom, $37,480,000 times 2%, plus the extraordinary aid that was received in excess of what we budgeted, $102,435. So the maximum amount we can have for unreserved is $852,042, and that's what we have. As far as a comparison of budget to actual, the budget this year, we had $40,178,120. We spent $37,837,293, or 94.17%. Historically, we've usually spent about 94,000 or 94%, and that has allowed us to return good money to surplus to replenish our surplus. Are there any questions on the financials?
Hey, it's Justin Benford. So the amount of the expenditures, the $37,480,000 number, what's the difference between that number and then the number further down at the bottom that's $37,837,000 next to the total general fund expenditures? What's the difference between those two numbers?
You mean 37,837 at the bottom?
Yeah.
What that is, it's the expenditures, 37,480 up top, plus the reserve for encumbrances, because they've really been spent against last year's budget.
Got it. And then help me. And then the 37,480 number of the expenditures, that includes capital expenditures, maintenance expenditures, or no? That's separate.
The 37,480,000, that's our operating expenditures. That would include Fund 10, 11, and 12. So, yeah, it would include all operating expenses and capital outlay.
Yeah, Justin, actually, in the 1920 year, we didn't have any capital outlay expenditures. So if it was in Fund 12, it would be, but for this year, since there was none, there is none. But it would be if there was. In this year's budget, there will be. The budget we're in right now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the fund balance, and the balance, seems to grow. Last year and then this year, it's grown. I'm looking at what that's comprised of. I see the capital reserve is the largest item. Maintenance reserve is the second largest item. Out of the capital reserve, you mentioned we used $2 million in 2021.
800,000, yes.
Okay, over $2 million 2021. But this is what's remaining after spending that $2 million.
No,
the $4 million is before the $2,000,008.
You remember this is as of June 30th, 2020.
June 30th.
Got it.
The next day, that number goes down $2.8 million.
Got it.
Okay. Any other questions for Rob? All right. Awesome. Thanks, Rob.
Okay,
Really
thank you.
appreciate
And I'd
your
just
time.
like to add that there's no comments and recommendation this year's audit. It's probably the first time in quite a while that's happened. So the business office should be commended. It did a good
Since
job.
Dawn Leary, I think. So congratulations.
Probably, yes.
Excellent work, Mike.
Hey, so can I ask one more question? Just overall, how would you look at the financial health of this district? It's not apples to apples across various districts that I'm sure you serve, but just looking at a district of this size, you see the size of our fund.
Actually, very good, because you have the maximum unreserved surplus and you have money in capital reserve and maintenance reserve. So you're in about as good a shape as the state will allow you to be.
Okay. And the part that I think I'm missing right now is for the capital reserve and the maintenance reserve. I don't have a good enough understanding right now of what the maintenance expenditures are expected to be over the course of the next year or the year after that. And I don't know if that's, what is a school dues?
We'll see what happens. These reserves are put up in case you ever need them. You can use them in your budget, or you can take a resolution out and do a maintenance project for required maintenance. You can do the same thing with the capital reserve for a capital project.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Good
Rob.
night.
All right, great.
Congratulations, Mike.
Yeah, good work.
Thank you.
No comments. It's huge. Took a lot of effort. Okay, we're going to go into committee reports. I'll actually start with Heather. She has a PTA update from her meeting with the HMHS PTA.
Hi, everyone. Just super brief update. The role for any person attending PTA meetings is to bring back to the board things that the PTA would like to share. One of the things that they started looking at on the high school PTA, I didn't realize until I actually attended the PTA meeting that the high school PTA doesn't raise any funds or they don't have any fundraising activities. Something that they were discussing doing was just putting something out on social media, collecting donations. Several of them wanted to get air purifiers to help enable us to get students back into the classroom sooner. Tammy is going to work with them to find something that she feels might be an appropriate use for the funds, because all of the classrooms that need air purifiers currently have them. But I just wanted to share with the board that those were some things that the PTA was concerned about, and that they're contemplating putting something out to solicit donations, and they're going to work with Tammy where to best spend the money. That's everything.
Muted, Adam. You're muted, Adam.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks for letting me know. Every committee met between our last board meeting and this working session, so we can get an update. Curriculum, Jamie, we met on the 2nd, I believe.
The 9th, but
There we go. Always accurate.
it's on the paper. So, okay, we did a data update with Ms. Simkus, Dr. Russo, and Mr. Licata, and that is going to be in detail at the March 25th board meeting. So I won't go into detail now. But we did talk about explicitly adding to the data analysis to disaggregate information about race, socioeconomic status, free and reduced lunch, and gender, so that kind of piggybacks off what we're doing in the Equity Council to ensure all our students are receiving equitable education. We talked about the new Linkit revised parent letter, so thank you for doing that, which is a little bit clearer for getting information about the Linkit. Dr. Priolo talked about the ruler program. We talked about ISP, which is the instructional support program for grades K through 2, which is going to start up again. It will be virtual, and the students that will receive those services are going to be teacher recommended. We are currently working on the Camden County College dual enrollment, and what that is we had it quite a while ago, and Camden County has it a little more aligned. And so what that is students are able to take high school classes for Camden County College credit, and it will depend on which courses get accredited, but that's something we're looking into. We talked about the math committee, and that's continuing ongoing. We talked about making sure that any math curricular changes are aligned with PSATs and SATs and science courses. And that's really it. And we talked about, we had a recent professional development meeting, I guess, this week. It wasn't snowed out, right? And that's it. Our next meeting is March 10th.
Thank you, Jamie. Any questions? Okay, I think I said communications committee. That was the curriculum committee update. The communication, finance facility, Justin, I gotta give Justin some public props. Not only were his minutes complete, but they had images from our meeting embedded in the minutes. It was
I was set up for success by the administration that shared those images with me. So
go ahead.
Yeah, no, we met on the 8th. There were 5 items in particular that we discussed. The first was a new sculpture opportunity for the high school. The district was approached with, the potential to host a sculpture titled "Reaching," which is a reaching hand that's meant to convey that everyone can attain their goals if they just reach for them. Very big sculpture made of solid Carrara marble, weighs about 1,000 pounds. We talked about, if we were to host that sculpture, potential locations, things like protecting the sculpture. But first we thought it would be a good idea to potentially engage the students in the evaluation process, especially for something, as significant as that would be on school grounds. Second item we talked about was the Municipal Alliance. That one was a quick discussion around the fact that there are currently 3 positions with a stipend for the Municipal Alliance. In the minutes, you see and you already know, that the organization is a community organization, that's meant to raise awareness around underage alcohol and drug abuse. And on the agenda, actually, is an item to formalize the funding for those 3 stipend positions, with the district and the borough essentially splitting the cost. The borough being responsible for about half of that, and the district for the other half. The third was an opportunity that Lizzie had, and I think the only reason it was brought to the Finance Facilities Committee meeting was because it involved sidewalks there. Understanding that elementary schools engage in projects like this all the time. But this particular project would be free and offered by the Robotech Educational Services Inc. company, and we would teach kids motor skills and allow them to paint certain images on the sidewalk together with words, work on their motor skills and language and reading skills. You can see an image, as Adam alluded to, in the minutes. The fourth item was, which is sort of a standing item, even here at this board level, for the district borough land swap. We talked about a little bit of our frustration about how long it's taking for the land swap to occur. And, we talked more about the latest, hiccup in the process, which I believe the borough's explained, relates to this variance process and needing to go to the planning board for variance requests. And so we discussed, potential ways to maybe hasten that land swap. And the final item, of course, was the budget, and was obviously the largest part of our agenda. We talked about all sorts of things that you would expect us to talk about, including district goals, salary cost, benefit cost, tax levy, technology, behavioral services, district goals, etc. And we also discussed, the importance. Just a moment ago, for example, we went through the audit. When we talk about finances, and it's like one of the most important things that we do. But it's really important, that we bring the public along and make sure that everybody can understand the budget at the very least at a high level, and understand kind of where our priorities are, what our largest costs are, and what the largest and most important items on the budget are. And by the way, we discussed the fact that there's been a change in board membership, and so not everybody, I don't think, has had the opportunity to go around to the various buildings and and see for yourself kind of what the existing spaces look like and where the needs might be. And so if anybody has an interest, I know personally, I need to go visit the facilities more. I went one time, I think last year, to visit the high school. But if anybody's interested, the administration offered to host us on a little bit of a tour. And then, we decided that we would meet again February 23rd to continue the discussion, since obviously we're in budget season. That's it.
Can I ask a real quick question? Hi, Justin. So the sculpture, I love what Stuart has done throughout the town, and I love that whole idea. Is the Finance Committee still discussing the sculpture, or did you agree to move ahead with it?
We agreed that it made sense to potentially bring in students to help evaluate the opportunity rather than just leaving it with the Finance and Facility Committee.
Okay. And when do you guys expect we'll get our first budget presentation? Next week?
Mike, what are you thinking, Mike?
Next week.
Cool. Thank you.
So I had a question, but I don't know if I should wait until Mike's presentation next week, but I will throw it out there now and you can tell me to wait. Thinking in terms of the summer and how we're going to need a lot of that. It would be nice that if we had money remaining that we could put money into the budget for any kind of student remediation services or anything over the summer. Is that something that is a possibility to be budgeted for? I mean, we used to have programs like that, a while ago. And, now that with COVID, I'm thinking those services might be more in need. Is that a possibility at all?
I could address that real quick. We actually, we devoted more than half of our CARES relief funds for that purpose. And Colleen, correct me if that's what the ISF, is that the same thing?
ISP, that's what Jamie was talking
ISP, okay, wrong acronym. And then so yeah, we devoted most of our funds. We spent some of that last summer and we still have plenty of money left. And we're also getting the next round of COVID relief funds, which we still haven't earmarked yet. But if it's the district's decision to devote more of that money to that purpose, we will do so.
And hey, Jamie, were you thinking of particular programs? I mean, I had the same question. I think you raised this at the last board meeting too, which I think is a great point to raise, because it's going to be on everybody's mind. Like what remediation do we need? I don't know what the structure of those programs could potentially look at. Have we thought about the potential structure of those programs?
We have. The elementary principals and I are set to meet this week to talk through some of those details a little bit more carefully, but be on the lookout in the next meeting.
Great. Good. Thank you.
Cool.
I had a comment about the statues itself. So following some of the other statutes that have been put in place, it worries me that it's a 2-year placement. And I'm going to use a term that Stuart's going to stop me on the street and say, why the hell did you say that in the meeting? There's a little bit of a bait and switch that, and I guess it's not so much a bait and switch, but a guilt to buy, that after you place a statue for a certain period of time, a lot of these artists want to sell their pieces, right? And when they get comfortably placed somewhere and the community gets used to them, there is a time limit, and that 2-year time limit says it goes at the end of that period, unless you want to raise the funds to buy it. So I just didn't want to set an expectation of what would be a non-academic spend. It's great that we would allow our space to be used to present somebody's artwork and it really fits the character of the town. But I would caution that the district not be placed in an awkward position of having to purchase the art at the end of the installation period.
Yeah, it's a great point. Somebody else on the committee, I'll give her credit, Linda, raised that exact point. Linda, I mean, feel free to go ahead. I think the cost of it was $20,000, if I recall. Right. So yeah, it would be a significant cost.
So Dave, that is actually why we think it's a really great idea to get the students involved. If it's something that the students connect with and it's something that's inspiring for the school, I mean, I think it's great, the amount of sculpture that we have throughout the town. And when a sculpture really resonates with the town finds a way to get those funds. That's how we have the heart in the center of town. Sure. So I do not think that that the district should pay for it, but if the students are engaged and there is a choice of one that is just so inspiring, then perhaps there will be a group of people in town that say we need to keep it there, and they find a way to do it. So,
or a class gift or something like that. Yeah, sure. No, that's great. I just wanted to make sure that in any placement agreement that there wasn't that back end promise. That's all. We were all thinking along the same lines, Linda. Thank you.
A couple of things. Just we are probably going to get a lot of state guidance on the summer learning. New Jersey's getting a bunch of CARES 2 Act money, so I believe I'm reading that the state is going to be focused on funding summer work and setting some scope. So just wanted to add that. And everyone see the pictures of the sculptures on the board update last week? Nice. So Chuck, did you have something you want to add? I'm sorry.
Yeah, to the summer work, they're actually talking with superintendents countywide about maybe even combining districts and or the entire county to try to provide as many opportunities for people as possible.
So they're going to regionalize our school districts, Chuck?
Yes, just for 10 weeks of summer year.
All right. Any other questions for Justin while we're in facilities finance? Okay, Lynn, we met on the 11th, correct?
Yeah, we met last Thursday, and we spent most of our time discussing the 12 policies and 3 regulations that are on the agenda for first reading this month. All of them are mandatory, and except for the new regulation regarding lead testing of our water in the schools, all of them are updates to existing policies and regulations. And actually, most of them deal with just some simple language changes. When the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, was passed in 2015, it replaced the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001. So most of these changes to our policies are just to make sure that we are more accurately reflecting the current federal policies. The other changes are to policy 0145, which is the bylaw regarding board member resignation and removal. And it states that a board member who misses 3 consecutive meetings without good cause may be removed, and that 48 hours notice must be given prior to the meeting at which a vote would be taken. And then policy and regulation 7425 outlines the changes to lead testing of the water in schools. Starting next year, testing must be done every 3 years. Currently, it's every 6. And the district must review lab results within 72 hours of receipt of those results. And then the new regulation outlines that process in detail. And then finally, policy 9713 regarding recruitment by special interest groups. The school district, if it receives ESSA funds, must provide names, addresses, and phone numbers of students to any interested military recruiters or recruiters from higher education. So this policy allows parents and adult students to opt out of the sharing of that information. It also requires that the district give annual notice of that option to parents and adult students, and the opportunity to opt out of any sort of recruitment activities like assemblies and stuff that are on school grounds. Any questions?
Hey, one thing I always thought about was, in these individual policies, there are so many places where it says that, either the board shall or the administration shall, do X, Y, or Z. And so, for example, in the curriculum content policy, it says the board, will review the curriculum and approve it annually. Superintendent shall do this or that. Is there somebody that tracks this? I think at some point, Larry had said that maybe it's in the handbook, and we compare various things. So a policy related to security cameras or something like that. Maybe that's going to be in the handbook and that's checked. But for something like this, do we actually approve the curriculum annually? Is it presented to the board?
It is presented in the reorg meeting every year. Our curriculum is reapproved. And it's updated, and as updates come throughout the year, so if new maps come in, they'll be approved, or new coursework. But every year at most of these things are every year at the reorg meeting in January.
Cool. Thanks.
Rob.
Other questions for Lynn? Okay. Linda, communications. I think that is the meeting we had on the 2nd, right?
That was on the 2nd, yes. We're, as we said last time, we're taking the time to reevaluate the purpose of the communications committee and talk about what is the next level of what we can be doing. We had a really good meeting and brought up a whole lot of topics. One of the things that we talked about was the current state of communications for the entire district. We talked about the need to evaluate format and frequency of communications and whether or not we even had the right tool. So it was an opportunity for us to really take a step back and say, what do we need? And is this board willing to back a different tool if we're not giving the administration and faculty the correct tools to communicate to parents, to the community? Is the board behind the idea of really putting something else in place? So right now, I think that there's going to be some research done on what other tools are available. Are they the right tools? What would be the cost? And then certainly come back with findings and recommendations on that. We also talked about the board meeting bulletin. So when we put the communications committee in place last year, one of the things that we started doing was putting a communication in place right after each board meeting where we summarized the main points. So for anyone in the community who wasn't able to attend or wasn't going to view the full meeting, that there would be a bulleted point list of here are really the things that you should probably be aware of for what was discussed, and here are some upcoming agenda items you might be interested in. And we talked about that it wasn't really very effective. Well, we went through, we did create that bulletin every single month, but it was posted online, and after looking at the traffic, there's hardly anyone that goes and sees it. So it's not that we think that process wasn't valuable, but the fact that it's not reaching anyone makes it invaluable. So then we're talking about, well, what would be a better way to, if we're going to spend the time to do that, get that information out to folks. So these are a couple of things that we raised these issues, and we said we really do want to drill down and get to some of these in the next meeting. Additionally, what we talked about was the town calendar. I mean, that's never been a district project or a board project, but I think that because of COVID, that there's so much school information that's in that calendar that is now just, there's a vacuum there for families. And so we just started kicking around what could we possibly do to see if we could get something rolling so there truly could be a calendar for families next year. So all of those things are, as we're ramping up, the things that we're looking to address in that next level of the communications committee. And that's it.
Thanks, Linda. Okay. Thanks, Linda. Gino, Assistant Superintendent's report, anything?
No formal report from me, Adam.
Okay. Thank you. Chuck, did you have any report today?
I do.
Good. What are we?
Okay. Oh, hold on. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, you guys can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it, Chuck.
Yes.
Thank you very much. All right. So this is really focused on our COVID updates and our phase 2 timelines. But I wanted to let you know, obviously we have potential another storm on the way. Right now, I was out of town. I was on the roads today. Now, once I left Haddonfield, the roads were pretty good. But it's going to get cold tonight, and there is a chance that some more ice is going to hit us on the ground. So it'll be another early morning call. So we'll be up again. The team will be up again at 4 o'clock looking at the stuff. Cohort B is missed more. They've been hit worse than Cohort A on this. We all know that. That's why we want to make sure that we flip-flop today and yesterday. If we cannot come in tomorrow, we will put out a calendar next week that'll be revised to give Cohort B make sure that they don't miss another day there. The easy answer would just be move them to Monday. We want to make sure that any move we make doesn't impact IEP mandates and those type of things. So we're running through some problem solving now. Hopefully it's a non-issue. Hopefully it's not a weather day, and then no weather next week, and then the week after that we're in combined cohorts. So that'll be a good thing. Our COVID numbers, you can see our dashboard. These are active COVID cases in the district. There's a total of 9 of them. You can see 4 at the high school, and 4 of them are staff members. One thing, some of those staff members are contracted staff, so it is a little bit different than having teachers in the rooms. But they are people who work in our buildings, so they're included in our tallies. Here's our COVID positives. You can see that we're up a little bit this week. We were on that downward trend. But once again, you can see the red there are staff members. As I said, some of those are contracted staff who are in the building, and not necessarily teaching staff or EAs and office staff. COVID by grades, as it's been pretty traditional, high school has the highest numbers. That's to be expected. We know that's been the trend, and that's not just here. That's all over the place. And this is what we all wait for. I'm sure every week we get excited to see our Cali scores, and you can see that we're doing very well, right? So, it's actually better than we had hoped. When we picked March 1st as a projection, we kind of were using history to see how far we would get it down. You can see that right now, as of last Sunday, it's 17.66 is the case rate. We were hoping for under 25. And we were hoping to be under 9 in our percent positivity, and we're at 6.3. So we're having consistency in that. Not only did this dip down 1 week, but we can see that trend that it's staying that way. Now the caveat to that is today in Camden County, I think there are 158 new cases, which is up because we were the last couple of days we were at 35, maybe 89, so it was down. And now we had 158 today. So it's always a very precarious situation. But these numbers are trending where we want to go to move to phase 2. And they make me confident. I think I make my whole team confident that, 10 days from now, we'll be in phase 2 and it'll be a safe situation. Our metrics, just reviewing them, our major indicators, case rate, the 25 per 100,000. You saw we're 17.66 now. Positivity less than 9%. We are in a Cali code of 2, and at this point in time, we have no high level instances linked to transmission in school, and we have no accelerating community transmission. So we are on path to get to our next step in phase 2. Just reviewing our timeline. I put down, we shared it in January 20th. We actually shared our phase 2 in October. In October, I think if I recall correctly, our metrics were a case rate of less than 10 and a percent positivity of less than 5, because that's the numbers we were being told by then. Now our numbers have adjusted to that. We put out our preliminary survey results. They were shared with the principals, with the staff, and the families. We'll be reviewing those tonight. Then this week, we started moving furniture back into the classrooms. So classrooms started to fill up. And I'll be honest, it caused some anxiety. Things started popping in there, and the rooms felt more, I'll say, claustrophobic. There is physical spacing is something we hear all the time, physical distancing. And we went from 12 desks in a classroom to 21. And you could start to see that. And it did have, you could feel it. There was a heightened anxiety. I think you might say it's going to happen, but you can see the desks. It did raise some eyebrows. I'll be honest with that. Yesterday, Camden County Department of Health had a site visit. They sent people out because we were asking to come and look at our plan, look at our facilities, look at what we're doing, give us any feedback, give us any suggestions, and they were out and they did that. It was a great experience, actually. I was actually talking to a couple superintendents today about it. I recommended they do it because it was a non-judgmental visit. They didn't come in to say you guys are doing something good, bad, or indifferent. They said, here's something to consider. Here's something to think about. So it was very beneficial. I'm giving our 18th. I'm giving our update. Tomorrow at noon, we're going to launch I'm going to call it a family declare final intentions. Our preliminary survey numbers that I'm going to share, I'm going to talk about them a little bit. I think they may adjust between now and then as families get some more information. Then once we get those final numbers, we've got to make facilities adjustments, which may be taking some desks out of rooms if people change their mind, but also may be changing classrooms. So if we find that one group is going to be larger than another, we might have to switch classrooms and do all that. So there's some facilities adjustments that are going to have to happen this week that are going to be pretty complicated at places. Then March 1st, K-2 move into phase 2, and in March 15th, we're going to move in with 3-12. We are on track. We're on schedule with our plan, with our timeline. As I said, Camden County sent 2 regional environmental public health specialists out yesterday. They reviewed general practices and procedures. They went over how we enter the building, how we do screening, the survey in the morning, all of those things, how we work hallways. We shared our details for phase 2 and our preliminary survey results. Then we toured classrooms and science labs. They got tape measures. They measured things. They made suggestions. They took everything in, and it was a good piece. Ultimately, the takeaway is they recommend, and they said, and Dr. Nowako is going to recommend 6 feet in the cohort model. That is what the Camden County Department of Health recommends. It's a recommendation. It's a recommendation. And they likened it to, actually, they used the CDC guidelines came out. So CDC guidance came out last week. And they said that's recommendation. And right now, the New Jersey Department of Health is reviewing the CDC guidelines, and they are going to adapt or not adapt them. So they can't be any less stringent than the CDC, but they can be stricter. And what they said, they said, every state is different. Every community is different. Every school district is different. And so you have to adjust and accommodate to who you are. But the Camden County Department of Health has definitely said 6 feet in the cohort model is their recommendation. It should be noted, at no time when we were going through this and explaining them, their jaws didn't drop. They didn't say, we're going to do what? There was nothing to that effect where they reacted like, I can't believe this. They said, we really understand what you're trying to do. We understand the importance of getting kids in the school. We understand why you're trying to do it. And we appreciate the efforts going into it. So it was a really good conversation as opposed to it wasn't an evaluation, it was really a conversation. They gave us some good recommendations about procedures. The start and the end of the day, when you're going to have twice as many people come into a building, everything slows down a little bit. Bathrooms, hallway movement, all those type of things. They looked at classroom setups and some of the furniture. They recommended certain furniture be moved. Really strongly looked at stuff like computer tables with 2 or 3 computers next to it, but not using those, which were not, but wanted to make sure. Talked about once a room is set for maximum numbers and distancing, having a way to mark the floors or something to make sure they go back because desks get moved. And the key to this is the consistency in what you're doing in those classrooms and making sure that the classrooms are set up the way they're supposed to be. And then the thing they stressed over and over again is communication. There is zero doubt that phase 2 increases risk. That's what it is. It does that. And they really believe the most important thing in this plan is that everyone understands that. And we can't assume that people are going to understand it. They really said, you've got to say this, you've got to make people aware so that they can make the most informed decision about what they're going to do with their families as possible. So it was a good visit. It was informative, and I think at the end we got a lot of good information out of it. So the kindergarten plan, we did some work on this, and it's March 1st. They're back 5 days a week in person. We were fortunate in that this year we hired, we talked about it last week, an extra kindergarten teacher in essence. because our kindergarten teachers are half-time teachers, they couldn't help virtual students because their days were so limited. So even though we extended them to a 0.7 teacher from a 0.5, we still had to hire a full virtual teacher. For us to have kindergarten go about 5 days a week, one of the things we had to do was to make the fully virtual kindergarten students have a dedicated fully virtual teacher. So our fully virtual teacher who we have in place now is going to be working with those students. In honesty, there's, it's the bad part is you're not with your homeroom teacher now you've been with. That's not something we want to avoid. It's not the best of practices. But the other side of it is that you're going to have a dedicated teacher working with those students all the time. You're going to have increased number of live stream interactions and increased focus. And for that, most of the year, for the entire year, this teacher's been working with most of the virtual students, many of them throughout the entire year. So it's not like we're being pulled out and put in with something they don't know. Most of the, except for maybe one section in one of the schools, have been working with the teacher, so they know the teacher. So that transition we feel will be a smooth one. And then Wednesdays, instead of ending at 12:45, we're going to 11:15. We are going to have students who are not virtual, who are going to be quarantined or ill, who need time, extra time. And in addition, some of our kindergarten teachers are also building interventionists, and they have to be working with other students. So they would be doing that on the Wednesdays. So that's how they're going to make up that time. So that's our revised kindergarten plan. And here's our survey results on the preliminary results. Now, these are used to establish, furniture going to the rooms, how we're going to have the setups and those things. You can see elementary has the highest percentage in, and high school has the lowest. These numbers, especially elementary, are higher than we had anticipated. I think last week I predicted 80% in the elementary school, and we're at 91%. Middle school's at 84, and I thought we'd be closer to 75, and high school 74, and I think we were thinking 70, so that's about it. Now you'll notice we still have some responses that haven't come in yet. But they are, like I said, they're higher than we had expected. And you look at the elementary school, Haddon has 96% of the students have said they're going to come back to full in person. Now, when we re-ask this question, I know people are getting frustrated at this question, and we've asked it so many times. I think some people thought we're using it to develop a plan, but really what we're trying to do is use it to figure out how to best implement the plan at this point in time. And I'm not sure if we weren't clear about that, but then we want to make sure this is about implementing the plan now. So I know that there are people who said they're going to come back in person who are waiting to see the results of the survey, that they said yes, and if the numbers are higher than they like, they're going to change it to virtual. So those numbers may drop a little bit, but based on the feedback we're getting, I don't think they're going to drop much. They're not going to drop back to 80% like I had anticipated. So we're going to see those numbers shift a little bit now. I think Central School had 4 or 5 kids switch to full virtual already in anticipation of it. I'm saying full in person, in anticipation of this. So those numbers caught us a little bit off guard. And that's why some of these facilities moves we're making now are so important. Here's by grade level. You'll see where roughly the kids are coming in the full virtual. If you look at Lizzie Haddon, grade 3, 100%. Said they're going to come back in person. These numbers tell us if these numbers hold true. One of the things that we've already started discussing, we discussed it with principals, and we're having a meeting on Monday, and we discussed with HEA leadership. This changes Wednesdays, right? Because our need for Wednesdays is based on the full virtual piece. If these are the numbers, we're going to brainstorm how to better use resources. A couple of weeks ago, I talked about the Wednesdays being a resource issue. If these numbers hold true, we're not using our resources as best we can there. So that is something we have to explore about what we would do with Wednesdays. And we have some creative ideas. And we talk with HEA leadership, and they've had some ideas too. So we're going to hopefully work together over the next several days, right? Because when we come back in March, if we can support the virtuals and get the Wednesday back, that would be the optimum thing to do. And if these numbers hold true, I think we can be creative and find a way to make that happen. But there has to be some solutions to keep everything in place. Remembering that with the half day, a lot of IEP mandates are met on Wednesdays, and we can't just ignore that. They're crucial to those children. So there are some delicate balances, but as I said, we have already started that conversation. Here's the high school and the middle school. So there's the pattern that the younger kids are coming in more than the older kids. You see the seniors at 61%. Of course, 16% haven't responded. You know, that's senior in high school, to be honest, as a former high school guy. That's pretty typical being a senior in high school. So those are those numbers, and you can see the spacing in the high school will be, and middle school will be better than the elementary schools, which may be more crowded. Increased risks. I said it before. The county said it's important to make sure, and we believe what we're doing is safe. We believe we're not putting anyone in imminent danger. We believe that, but we also have to be as open and honest about where we are and what's happening as possible. I'd like to believe, although that we are as transparent and making sure people understand what all the details involved. So the NJDOE and the CDC still recommend at least 6 feet when the greatest possible extent. That's still the guideline. We understand and agree to that. But when it's less than 6 feet and there is a greater risk, there's an increased risk for exposure, increased risk for contact tracing, all of those things, the increased risk is there. But as it says in that fourth bullet, but we strongly believe weighing these risks up against the importance of increasing time in school for students and continued implementation of layered mitigation strategies. We believe the risk is worth the reward here. According to CDC, there's evidence to suggest that K-12 in-person school attendance is not a primary driver of community transmission. That's plays in the favor. One of the things that the county said really strongly is they're concerned, the Department of Health is concerned that people now that the vaccine's coming out are not getting tested like they were before. So we have people who are symptomatic, maybe one or two of the mild symptoms, they're not getting tested, whereas 3 or 4 months ago they were. And what can happen if you have a student in school who doesn't get tested and just stays home sick for a couple of days and is positive, you don't find out that student's tested positive until maybe a transmission to someone else. And so they're really encouraging, for community safety, as a community first minded piece, get tested, continue to get tested, continue those good practices of that. The other part is the contact tracing. When we were basically 6 feet apart, if a student or a teacher was positive, then you would have maybe 2, maybe 3 people sitting right next to them would be quarantined for contact tracing. That number is going to go up. It's going to go up because there's going to be maybe 2 people to the right and 2 people to the left and diagonal. So we may be seeing more of the quarantining. The other piece that will happen here, just so we're all upfront and aware of this, we will close classrooms and grade levels quicker than we would have in the past. So we won't just act now. We closed at one point, I think it was Central 5th grade, on a number of symptomatic kids, not positives, but there was a number of kids who were symptomatic, and we said, this looks funny to us, and we closed the 5th grade. We're going to be quicker to do that now, to try to isolate pockets, right? Because we know we have an increased risk, and therefore we are going to probably be more cautious or aggressive, whatever the way better we describe it is, in how we quarantine and close contact in some of these pieces. Even though we will be in masks, even though we will have shields in the K to 5 and in labs and some tight spaces in the high school and middle school, distance and time are the 2 factors you look at. And so we will be taking that seriously and look to make sure we're really on top of that. Here's some examples of what classrooms that are being set up now look like. The one on the left is, as you can see, is 5 feet distance. There's a 4 foot and the bigger space, a bigger room was able to hold 24 students with 4 feet. We're measuring from center of desk to center of desk. That's the measure. So we're looking at the 4 feet. It's from the center of one desk to the center of the next desk. That's the standard we're using for these pieces. Here are some high school. Here you can see on the left is a pretty large room where you can get 30 students in the 4 feet. On the right, as I said there, that's got 28 students. It's only 2.5 feet. We're going to move that class. We're going to look to explore other spaces to have that class, which will be, once those final surveys come back next week, a huge factor in the fact that we may have to pick up and move classrooms. And moving classrooms is not just moving desks. It seems like a very simple thing. There's other things in certain classrooms that you have to move along with it. There's materials. Math classes have different supplies than English classes and science classes. So, moving a classroom is not just moving 3 or 4 desks. There's more to it than that. And that's something we have to work on there. And see some of the challenges we faced. Excuse me a second, please. In order to assure physical distancing in August, when we came together, we moved desks out and furniture out of classrooms. And because, as you know, one of our greatest problems in the district is there's no storage. So some of the furniture actually had to be disassembled. So right now we're in the process of reassembling furniture, bringing the classrooms, maximizing the distance. So it's not just throwing them in there. It is more of a piece. And so that's one of the pieces we have to do. Replace tables. Something that is challenging now is our K and 1 classes tend not to have desks. They're table-based classes. They're using desks now because that keeps the distancing better. We don't have enough desks to have every student have a desk. We're a couple hundred short, actually. And so we're going to have to use some tables and not use desks everywhere. So where we do the tables, they'll probably provide roughly the same 4 to 5 feet, 4 feet distance. They'll have shields, but kids may be looking in the same direction. It may be that not optimum piece there. They may be facing one another at the end of a long like science table. That may be something we have to look at. And then we have rooms with like science labs are very different because they have workstations in the middle of them. That some of the rooms can function as desks, others can't. They've got gas nozzles coming out of them, so we have to work around those pieces as well. Here's kindergarten and first grade room set up for phase 2. Each one of these does have between 3 and 6 feet. You notice the one in the middle has the tables with that will have the shields there. That's not optimal, but we don't have the desks we need. We actually reached out to other neighboring schools and asked if we could borrow desks. And they said, well, we hope to come back too as well before the end of the year. So we kind of need to keep our desks. And then what's going to happen next? Starting tomorrow at 19th, by noon, we're going to have a final survey put out. Maybe we shouldn't call it a survey because people are tired of taking surveys. We'll also, this presentation, all the updated reopening documents will be emailed to staff and parents and posted on the website. We're going to get this information out as we're taking advice from those 2 folks from the county. Communication. We have been tried to be flexible here. We have been flexible with a lot of the going back and forth because it was the right thing to do. We're not a rigid district. We do try to have flexibility and understanding and empathy for different situations. But when you choose between now and Tuesday, that's going to be your choice to start off with, because we will now Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we're going to be doing facilities changes. We're going to be moving things. We're going to be doing these pieces based on this information. And so we have to trust that this information is accurate. We're going to go back to our policy, which is if you want to change from virtual to in-person, it has to be done with 2 weeks notice at a marking period. Because we're trying to stabilize these things. Students placed on virtual instruction only due to accommodation, documented medical necessity, isolation and quarantine, travel protocols. Once they're done their isolation, they can return, but it has to be for those specific reasons. The travel is a frustrating piece because I know spring break is coming up and people are going to travel and then come back and want to be the virtual 2 weeks. And, the challenge there is you either say, yeah, we give it and you can be virtual for 2 weeks, or your kid's absent for 2 weeks, or you just come to school. None of those are ideal. But we go back a couple slides ago as we're working with the teachers to try to solve those problems of that virtual Wednesday. Controlling that virtual number and having a real good handle on it makes those solutions more realistic and more obtainable than they are if all of a sudden the week after spring break we get another 60 kids in one of the elementary schools goes virtual because they travel. That becomes a challenge that would be very, very difficult to address. So that's our phase 2. Now, we go back and forth, and one of the questions I got several times this week is why not go back to the AM/PM model? We like that model. I heard that several times this week. On a personal level, Chuck doesn't remember people liking the AM/PM model. I have a different version of that history. I have a version where people did not like that model at all, actually, and I didn't think I was going to keep my job after I sent it one night. The fact of the matter is, when we look at the number of hours we're increasing risk, and we're going to be at least doubling the time. And if we, depending on what happens with our Wednesdays, more than that we're in class now. If we were to go AM/PM, 2 things happen. You don't double the time. You only get about 25% more because you're only going 3 hours a day rather than 4 hours a day because we have to have 2 groups in with a lunch. And the thing I heard in August that I still think is true is the afternoon group is not having the same safety measures in place as the morning group because you don't have time to go through and get the full clean. So there is something to that. So even though we considered the AM/PM, we looked at all the models, we felt this was the optimum model. And one thing I want to add on to this, and I'm saying this because I mentioned it when we're talking about the virtual thing and working with the HEA leadership with this. I get emails, I shouldn't say a lot. I get several emails where people forward me articles about how the Philadelphia Teachers Union is keeping the schools closed and the Chicago teachers are doing this. That is not the case here. We are not being held hostage, whatever the term would be, by the HEA. They've been partners with this. They do challenge us. They do make sure that what we're doing is thoughtful. There are people, they're HEA, they're teachers coming in. COVID doesn't affect kids. Not everyone in our school building are children. There are adults in the school building. Those adults go home to family members who may be compromised. So there is a reason why sometimes many of the teachers are cautious. They have not been the HEA has not been an obstacle. The exact opposite. They've worked with us. They've come up with creative solutions. And I think the unfair painting that there may be some teacher units across the country, or even in the state, even in a neighboring town, which I think is the case in one of our neighboring towns, that is not what we're dealing with. Our path back is a deliberate path back with the teachers to ensure safety, to ensure that it's done right and correctly, to try to solve problems before they become big problems. And I would be remiss if I didn't point that out because it is a frustration to hear that people believe that the teachers are stopping this, when if you want to blame somebody for our progress, it's going to be Chuck you blame for the progress. Because I think what we're doing is a very cautious and a very thoughtful way. And as I say, cautious and thoughtful, more aggressive than almost any. I am not one of the most popular superintendents around now because people in other districts being, yes, we want to go to the Haddonfield plan. So I've had several superintendents email me and say, can you share the Haddonfield plan is? Because my parents want me to go, they want us to follow the Haddonfield plan now. So now I'm rambling, so I'm sure there's questions. So I'll stop my rambling. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to address it.
Hey, Chuck.
Yes.
Hi, it's Heather. First of all, thank you so much for all of that information you shared. I love everything you shared. I especially want to thank you for explaining why the morning versus also doing the afternoons doesn't work out. Just information like that is helpful. I also like the fact that you're still going to explore Wednesdays. So just a big thank you for that. I think you're handling this amazingly, and kudos that other school districts want to follow our model. Just real quick, I won't hold you to this number, but I'm just curious to size how many people are impacted. How many kids in kindergarten are attending virtually or want to attend virtually that the whole kindergarten new virtual setup will impact?
I think it's about 18. Is that correct?
No, it's lower than that. I can double check on that number. It's closer to around 12, but if you give me a moment, I'll pull that number up for you.
Thank you. I'm done, thanks.
Thank you. And thanks for the nice words, Heather. I appreciate that.
So Chuck, I too, we all watch the news, and I know what you're going through. I know that you have been so thoughtful, and you have looked at every side of this, and you recognize that what's good for one person is not good for another. What's good for teachers might not be good for students, and vice versa. And I know that you have been so thoughtful around all of this, and I think everyone appreciates how much you've done, and not just you, but your entire team. And then you watch the news, and you see that people are working so hard. They want to get schools open, which is, it really just is astounding. They're not talking about open like we're talking about opening it more. These kids have not been in school for a year. So I think we need to take pause and say, we're really fortunate with where we are, and we need to recognize this next step doesn't come without its risks. And I do think that it's smart to at least get out to parents, let them know that this is what you've been told, and we are taking this step, but it comes with risk. And I think that more communication is a good thought. And then just one other consideration, and this might not work with kids, with specifically younger ones, but we do know that the studies have shown that double masking is more safe. And with putting the kids, in that close proximity, certainly can't mandate it, but maybe with that communication, just a mention that because we're closer, if you wanted to choose to double mask and the kids could tolerate that might not be a terrible idea.
Certainly a good recommendation we could make. Correct. Yes. One of the other things we looked at is testing for staff members. Try to make testing readily available for staff members, and we've talked to a couple vendors about that. And that's one of those things we're still trying to nail down. It's more complicated because everyone's doing it quote unquote for free, but nothing's free, right? So we have been working with that idea as well. But the double mask is something we certainly could suggest.
Yeah, or even just a refresher. You guys might even be considering this already. Just a refresher on good protocols. I mean, I'm sure that the teachers are in a great groove and they've probably already got this. But it wouldn't hurt to have another reminder. Like, look, everybody, masks need to be tight fitting. They need to cover your nose. If you need to sneeze, don't pull down your mask. You need to be rinsing your hands, hand sanitizer. Things like that. Just to show people that we're all together and everybody's excited, but we still need to follow good protocols.
Excellent point, Justin. That's some of the advice the county gave us too. Is they said, put something that's 6 feet long on the board, like whatever it is, so people can see what 6 feet, so they can see it, right? What it looks like. And what you said, one of the challenges, they said, when you first start doing this, you need to have monitors outside because the kids are going to be excited to be together for the first time. They're going to run and see each other, right? Because this is the first time I'm in school with my friend Bobby, right? So that's going to happen. So that's. When we if we go back and look at those charts, there were some of those spike times was complacency, right? We had gone a while, we hadn't been in the numbers, and it should be complacent. The reinforcement's always a good thing, yes.
Cool. Thanks, Chuck.
And to follow up on that question, based on the preliminary survey data, the kindergarten parents, the number was 15 for the all virtual students. And that was really also one of the keys that allowed us to explore an all virtual teacher, because prior to that, the numbers, it was nearly double that. So that was another obstacle to assigning a virtual teacher for kindergarten for over 30 kids.
Thank you, Gina.
And kudos for putting the effort into kindergarten when other districts are chopping it because it's not a mandated service. But my question is, what the hell's the end of a market period? Can you speak in dates instead of, abstract? I know, and it's different for each of the schools, right?
I can't.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I think, in the communication, though. No, so this is my recommendation. And that is to not speak in the abstract, because as Linda said, one of our challenges is the calendar. Right? They talked about that in the communication committee. This is a challenge for parents too. I just say, hey, you're doing all your work, right? I don't really know or care, frankly, when a work card comes out.
3 years ago, 3 years ago, when I was in a building, I could have told you when the market period is then. These days.
Oh, sure. But I would think in that survey, so people know when they're making that decision, they're making it until a date, not to an abstract date, but an actual date based off of their school.
It's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Hey, Chuck, can I ask one more question here?
Sure.
So what I believe you just presented, and maybe I'm not sure if I understood it correctly, but it didn't matter what direction people were moving their students from, that you wanted them to register prior to the start of a marking period. So if they were virtual and wanted to come in person, basically, because we're in the final marking period, it's almost like if they choose to be virtual this upcoming week where the choice can be made, they're going to be virtual for the entire school year. Is that a true statement, or is it easier to go from one direction to the other? Like in person to virtual, it might be easier than virtual to in person.
It is easier. And right now, we're trying to really grasp the numbers so we can get things going, right? So the thought is, hey, I'm in person. I can just switch virtual. It's not a big deal. I'm just not coming to school anymore. That's true. But that whole piece about now we have to maybe shift what we're doing. For example, kindergarten would be a good example, right? So if a bunch of kindergarten kids now said, I want to switch from in-person to virtual, now that virtual teacher model may not work anymore, and it may affect the entire model. So, once we have the numbers down, there may be a time when we say, okay, we have this control, we're doing this. If you have a specific, and by the way, we don't do things in absolutes here. We are not these unilateral, draconian people. If you come to the principal and you say, I need to go virtual, and here's the reason why, we would listen to the reason why. We just because it's not March yet, boom, punch our fist down. Obviously, going from from virtual to in-person is a big deal, because now spacing is an issue. You might be affecting how classrooms are set up. I don't know if I answered your question, but we're going to try to stick to that. We're going to try to stick to our policy. If there are circumstances that warrant special decision making, we'll address those as they come.
So for high school, so if the timeline is March 15th to bring them in, and then the marking period ends April 14th. That's the final day of the. So there's a month time there.
Yeah. Thanks, Gina.
You're welcome.
So, in the structured spaces, you have your chairs, so and you've spaced that out. How are you going to try to maintain social distancing in the unstructured spaces? All-purpose room. I'm not talking about for lunch, but like you said, sometimes gathering outside. And just how are you planning on to maintain space in an unstructured distance in an unstructured space?
For talking about when you saw all-purpose and outside would be, we're looking at probably K to 5 is in that type of realm. Just monitoring them now. So said all along, it's amazing how these kids are now used to this world. From the very beginning, I think the first couple of weeks we came on and said, could not believe that first graders are sitting with a mask on all day and just being able to do it. If you watch now, if you watch playgrounds during mass breaks and snack breaks outside, kids go to their dots and they stand there, right? And then they separate this. They know this routine. Now, the challenge is going to be there's more of them, so we have to have more space. But we're relying on the monitoring of the staff, relying on the behavior of the students, neither of which is perfect.
Sure.
APRs aren't being used unless it's raining outside, because there's spaces we're not using right now. In the high school, middle school, we're asking kids to be responsible because they're the age where they can start taking those responsibilities on themselves.
Just because my daughter's in school 5 days a week, in their unstructured spaces, they have the get your hula hoop rule. So when we sent them back 5 days, everyone brought a hula hoop. And if they're worried about spacing, everybody grabs their hula hoop. And that dictates the space, like you lay it on the ground and you have your hula hoop versus somebody else's. So it's just a suggestion if you're having trouble with that. It works well. It's funny to see the pictures, but the grounds are just dotted with their hula hoops. So that's where they claim their space.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you for the tremendous amount of work and bravery too, because I know you're. There's a certain amount of it that's needed to even suggest this.
Well, thank you. And it's not, and I would be remiss, the HEA I said, is a great partner. So is the leadership team. The number of hours they put in. I mean, I probably rephrase it, or probably phrase it differently. If you do want to say we're moving too slow, it's Chuck's fault. If you like what's happening, it's the leadership team's fault, because they're the ones who do the heavy lifting. I throw out an idea and they take it and run with it. And they do it tirelessly and effortlessly, or without concern for effort, 24 hours a day. So the credit for that goes to them.
Thanks, Chuck. All right, board, you got an invite to an exec session during Chuck's presentation. We just have a very quick, maybe 5-minute need for an exec session for a contractual opportunity, and we will do that right after the meeting. We're going to move to public comments now. Chris, could you throw the slide up on the screen?
While you do that, just a question, Adam. So earlier in the week or end of last week, we were going to have that exercise tonight.
Yeah, we moved it to next week. We were going to do that before the meeting, so we're not going to do that exercise during the meeting. It's going to be an open meeting. We're going to open the meeting and abide by sunshine laws, but it's going to be prior to the 7 o'clock start, because it's sort of a training session. So we want to pull the training separate from the board meeting. But it's also going to be viewable on the district's YouTube page. It's a public meeting, but it'll be separate from the actual voting meeting.
We have to re-advertise the meeting for the different time change. So that's one of the things we have to do this week.
And we'll have an exec session next week too. So we might have we may even start a little bit earlier than 6:30 to get it all in. So be prepared. So just a reminder for public comment, when you call the number on the screen and hit #6 to mute your phone. And then when we call on your I guess it's *6, you'll unmute your phone. We ask that you say your name, the street that you live on, and then we'll hear your comment. There's a 3-minute limit to the comments so that everyone can be heard. You can always get back in line and share further after your time is up. We don't generally answer questions in public comment. we write them, we'll mark them down and get them back to you individually if it's an individual question, or find a way to communicate to the public if there's a general question that needs answering. So I'm going to call on area code 646 ending in 40. If you could *6 your phone to unmute.
Hi, this is Kay Flannery calling from Windsor Avenue. How are you guys tonight?
Good, Kay.
So I thank you, Chuck, for the comprehensive review. I do have a number of questions and comments to make tonight, but I'll try to keep it brief. So I really have been following the recommendations and trying to wrap my head around this 6 feet requirement. And as you mentioned today, that is clearly the recommendation by the CDC and the Department of Health. And I'm really glad that their on-site visit was very fruitful for you. But, you know, and I will freely admit publicly that I was one of the folks that suggested going back to the table on the AM/PM model because of the requirements of the spacing. Couple of things. You said that we have to make a commitment by next week, starting really tomorrow, on that survey that you're going to send out. But I remember specifically asking you this question at the previous meetings and separately at our own PTA meetings about knowing for sure which classes will have less than 6 feet apart spacing. So how will I know if my children are going to be in a class without the 6 feet apart requirement, but yet you're letting me know that this is going to be a final decision on my family? You mentioned the comments about you being not a unilateral or having a draconian style, and I 100% agree with you, and I followed you all along. But you know, when you're saying that you believe yourself that we're not putting ourselves at a higher risk, and you said this tonight, in the same breath that you said you're going against what the CDC and the Department of Health is saying, and then yet saying again, the parents still have to know and be fully aware of the additional risks that we're placing our children upon. I'm just a little baffled and confused as to where we stand. Now, don't get me wrong, the logistics of this has been a nightmare, and I know that, but it's been a full year. I would have really hoped that we were maximizing, you know, alternative spacing in the building. You know, where are we in the APR utilization? There has got to be more opportunities to space out the kids, perhaps. And if not, you know, where we were in the summer when we were looking at different options, we're in a totally different place now. And I was hoping you would mention about the multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children that are showing up. I don't know if you guys are aware, but there have been more than 1,000 cases since, I believe, October. That was a statistic that I really recently saw. We all have to go back to school. I said this to you from the get-go, but I just don't know if we have enough information to be able to force us upon, you know, this decision. You as a board, the number one priority is that you have to provide a safe and equitable education for everybody. And another thing that I want to mention is that you're thinking that, you know, fewer people will choose virtual, and if that's the case, you'll do away with it or you'll have to. What's going to happen if the virtual option goes away almost, you know, and becomes almost non-existent, and then you have to quarantine an entire class? I really think that we have to take a step back. Now, we do have to go back. I personally will openly admit to you, I pulled my children out virtually and I had to put them back. And I have to put my children back, but not without information that is fully, you know, aware, making us aware of everything. So thank you for your efforts. But, you know, I'm really interested to know what your information will be in response to some of these questions I posed to you today.
Thanks, Kay. Okay. I don't see any more callers. Mike, can you read the comments sent in?
Sure. We have 8 comments, so I'm going to get right into it. The first one is from Susan Zitter. She's a Elizabeth Haddon teacher. Susan writes, "My name is Susan Zitter. I am a first grade teacher at Elizabeth Haddon School. I have been an educator for 31 years, the last 27 of which have been spent in Haddonfield. I feel compelled to respond to comments made by multiple community members regarding the current hybrid and virtual Wednesday model for elementary students. There is a suggestion, either stated or implied, that teachers need to get back to work, that virtual Wednesdays are a day off, and that teachers are getting paid but not working full time. I can tell you that in the 31 years of my career, I have never worked harder or longer than I have during this pandemic. I will share my personal story, but I know my colleagues have similar experiences. I arrived at work at 7 a.m., sometimes earlier. At 8:30, my students arrive. At 12:45, I dismiss my class. Technically, I suppose my lunchtime begins at 12:45, but I am outside well past that time every day, communicating and interacting with parents and caregivers. In truth, I have worked straight through my allotted lunch period since September. Now I don't even bother packing a lunch. I simply don't have time to eat. The afternoons are filled with meeting virtually with students and with planning. Planning includes grading assignments, analyzing assessments, planning for in-person learning, planning for asynchronous assignments, and recording lessons, planning with my special education co-teacher, preparing materials, answering emails. The list never ending. On virtual Wednesdays, I usually work from home at 8:45, hold a full class Monday morning on Google Meet, and that should last 45 minutes, but always goes longer because first graders need the time to share. I encourage them to do so. I have been introduced to siblings and pets, have seen favorite toys, have been carried via device to front doors to see newly built snowmen in the yard. This time to be all together as a community without masks or death shields is imperative for our social and emotional well-being. After that, I meet individually with students and I continue planning. Each day I take a dinner break, but I usually try to get a little more work done in the evenings. It has been a regular routine for my husband to take my laptop and close it at 9 p.m. or so and say, "You have to stop now." I do all this for one reason only, for my class of 18 first graders who are depending on me to provide them with a quality education despite an ongoing global pandemic. So I ask you in all sincerity, please, when members of the community call you, text you, email you, or stop you on the street to tell you that teachers need to get back to work or that they have too much time off, please tell them that the classroom teachers have never stopped working and that they cannot work any harder. In closing, please do not suggest that phase 2 will be any less time-consuming, less stressful, or less effort, because it absolutely will not, for a host of other reasons, but that is a letter for another day. When phase 2 is implemented, we will continue to go above and beyond for our students, because that is not just what we do, it is who we are. Thank you for taking the time to hear my thoughts. I wish you all good health as we continue to battle COVID-19 virus and overcome the obstacles that this virus has in place for our path to educating our students. Next public comment is from Holly Levy from Lakeview Ave. What are your plans for providing full-day childcare coverage for students entering kindergarten in the fall? It appears the new childcare program that replaced Haddonfield Childcare doesn't have an option for childcare to students in kindergarten, and also unclear if they have experience providing EDKP. It is not an option for a single parent to send a child to Haddonfield Kindergarten, and it is very disappointing that the current plan for fall is neglecting this issue. Next public comment is from Jeffrey Pinto, Mansfield Avenue. Our children need to be in school full-time starting now. I have a second grader at Lizzie Haddon. I am tired of watching him languish day after day in front of a computer screen. His mental, physical, spiritual, and academic health are being negatively impacted by this unnecessary and continued school closure. As a physician, I am aware that the CDC has recommended that elementary age children be allowed to return to the classroom with the proper safety precautions, which are in place in our district. Also, the children of the patient population that I serve in Medford, New Jersey, have been back in school for the entirety of the pandemic, largely without issue. Why can't Haddonfield, with all its resources, get our kids back into the classroom on a full-time basis? Please consider being much more aggressive about reopening our schools on a full-time basis. Our kids' success and happiness depends on it. Thank you for your time. Next public comment is from Nicole McGroarty on Shoes Landing Road. In anticipation of moving forward towards the goal of getting our kids back to school 5 full days, how long do we need to stay in the 4 half days scenario? After the 4 half days, are we going to 4 full days? What is the plan? Are you going to let the teachers union dictate your progress to move to 5 full days? The overwhelming majority of parents have voiced their support to send kids back to school and have done so since September. Yet here we are still in school only 2.5 days in February. The science supports kids returning to the classroom. Private schools all around our district and the country are safely in school 5 full days with no outbreak. Districts around us have started full day instruction. It seems that the board and the district are not using science to make decisions, but rather cowtailing to a teachers union. Next public comment is from Catherine Cruza on Homestead Avenue. How does the district use parent surveys to make decisions about reopening and or reopening plans? We as parents have been asked to answer multiple surveys about whether or not we want our kids to return to school in person since last summer. And in every case, the majority of the survey responses have been in favor of returning to in-person learning. And yet here we are almost a year into the pandemic, and our children go to school only 2.5 days a week if we are lucky. It feels very much like parents do not have a voice, and that as only advocates for what is best for the children, it is beyond devastating. We continue to watch our children flounder in an isolated environment week after week, and continue to watch as the data and science that supports the safety of in-person learning is largely ignored. I understand the district is finally moving to reopening school 4.5 days a week, and I hope that we as parents will be supported in our efforts to get the kids back into school. We are watching school districts throughout the country operating on a full day schedule as our kids sit in their rooms staring at computers. It's been a year. We need assurance from district and the board that our kids are going back to school and that the district is proactively moving towards a full-time schedule. Next public comment is from Richard Tomek on Lakeland Avenue. What are the district's plans to supplement the half-day kindergarten now that Haddonfield Child Care will not be providing their program beyond the 2020-2021 school year? If the policymakers and school district contend to maintain themselves as a high-quality educational program, then our youngest minds cannot be an afterthought. In the district's decision to switch from HCC to Alpha Best, this is exactly what has occurred. All of our competitive surrounding districts either offer full-day kindergarten or a tuition supplement. If space is the issue, I'd suggest the district work with a Lutheran church to make the space that formerly housed HCC available to Haddonfield kindergartners. The majority of Haddonfield parents invest a significant amount of money to send their kids to full-day school to develop their social and academic skills and for the benefits to be sustained. Children must continue to receive a high-quality early elementary education. Full-day kindergarten, at minimum, should be offered as a parent-paid tuition option for Haddonfield parents. Okay, next public comment is from Tracy Langan on Redmond Avenue. This school year to date, Cohort B has lost 4 in-person days due to weather. By contrast, Cohort A has lost 1 in-person day, resulting in a 3-day deficit for Cohort B. I am pleased that today's snow day will be made up either tomorrow or next week. However, in the interest of fairness and balance, are there any plans to make up the other in-person days for Cohort B? Next public comment is from Robin Devaney on Concord Drive. I want to thank the board, the administration, and the teachers for all of their hard work. I have been hesitant to comment on virtual learning because I feel everyone has gone above and beyond this school year. The teachers have been amazing, and I am very thankful for all they do. However, I continue to be concerned about how long we continue to be in a hybrid model. I am very excited about the changes starting in March, but we can do better. A number of schools are doing more, some starting back full-time 5 days a week. I am confident we could as well. I have heard the concerns about teachers teaching virtual as well as in person. My understanding is other schools are in the same boat. We should learn from other districts on how they are getting it done with a virtual Wednesday. I would like to reiterate again, the teachers are amazing and doing all they can in virtual days, but to consider it an equivalent school day is wrong. I want to stress this point since I have heard it mentioned if your child's needs are more different work, you should reach out to the teachers. The teachers are already working to meet each student where they are. They are doing all they can in limits of virtual learning. It is simply nowhere near the impact of in-person learning. The new model also leaves the special teachers behind. I have a creative son and he loves the specials. The special teachers are incredible as well. However, they are being left behind. The half-day model is robbing the students of the full experience with their special teachers. I am having a hard time understanding the safety concerns of lunch when the students have been having snack all year. Can't we model lunch after snack to be safe? Last, we need to remember that in-person school is about the health of our students. Yes, COVID is a paramount, and the board, administrators, and teachers have been amazing in helping minimize the risk. However, we cannot forget about emotional well-being. The impact of distance learning has been disastrous. We need to do everything and anything to get our kids back to normalcy while wearing masks. Thank you again. And that concludes the write-in comments.
All right, we got a couple more call-ins. Let's hear from 856 ending in 77. Star 6 to unmute your phone. It actually looks like you're unmuted. All right.
No, they're not unmuted, Adam.
They're not? Okay. 856 ending in 77, star 6 to unmute, and then you can present your comment. If not, we're going to have to move on.
Oh, there they go.
Hello, this is Mike on Beechwood Avenue.
Mike, what's your last name?
And I'm sorry?
Mike?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Mike who?
Mike Calzer on Beechwood Avenue.
Okay. Hey, Mike. Thanks.
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
I guess my overall question is, if the kids go back to school, how are they going to handle the whole quarantine process? You know, I see through athletics and what's going on there, if a kid gets COVID, like going back to school, is that entire classroom, the entire school, is the plan for them to go on a 10-day quarantine? Because if that's what's going to happen, then probably there's no point of the kids going back to school full time anyway, right?
Yeah, I think that's all going to come out, I'm sure, in formal detail. It's part of Chuck's presentation, but people will have to know that.
Yeah, I think that all, from what I understand, parents want to come back and want the kids to go back to school. I know there's some hesitation for teachers, and with parents having the option to work virtually, that's great. But if every case that happens within school, the kids have to quarantine for 10 days, the idea of bringing them back is great, but you're always going to have these cases. So if we're quarantining every other week for 10 days for every kid in that classroom or anywhere else, then what's the point of going back? Because you're going to be turning it on, shutting it down. It's just going to go back and forth.
Got it. All right. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
All right. 610 ending in 38. *6 to unmute.
Okay, you got it.
Hi, this is Colin Shanahan on Lakeview Avenue.
Thanks, Colin.
First of all, thanks for all your effort in this crazy year and on phase 2. The board made the decision last year to bid out the before and after school, which resulted in the elimination of Haddonfield childcare. This means that there is no longer an EDKP option. I know there's a discussion with Alpha Best to potentially fill this void, but I'm wondering why we're not building it out, especially as it appears that Alpha Best doesn't offer EDKP in another school district. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. All right. John, or Chris, you can pull the comment screen. Chuck, is there anything you want to address or no?
I'll reach out to individuals.
Yeah, all right, good.
I'll reach out to individuals. Yeah.
You need to restart your computer, Chuck. He'll be right back with us. Okay, good. The portion of the meeting where we review our agenda topics for next week is coming up. If you couldn't hear Chuck, he said he'll get back to people individually. Okay, we're going to review Section 9, governance. Anything about the policies that were mentioned by Lynn, our HIB report? Is there anything, questions, discussion? Okay, Section 10, curriculum and special ed. Personnel, anything in the personnel section that you...
I have a question about the settlement, but can I add it to the executive session then?
Yes.
Thank you.
11, personnel. 12, business recommendations. We're going to have
I had a question for the, just more clarification because I don't understand what all the numbers mean specifically, like the special revenue fund that I'm understanding. I guess I'm not understanding why debt service fund is in both the budget and the tax levy.
I could address that. So under the budget column, that is what the budget of whatever fund that is. And then the local tax levy column is just whatever amount of that budgeted amount is tax levy.
Oh, okay. So that's how, because the bond money that comes in is separate from the initial taxes.
Right. That is straight tax levy money. Now, a week from today, that number could change because the governor has his budget message on Tuesday, and we get our state aid numbers on Thursday. So I might be adjusting this right before my budget presentation next week. So so if to apply our debt service aid, that would only decrease the debt service tax levy dollar amount.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, that led to my question, Mike. Where are the winds blowing in terms of, is there any scuttlebutt about it?
There is not even a whisper down the lane with this.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments on 12? Any comments on the minutes? Okay, items for future consideration. Okay, any motion to go into exec?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Second.
David and Heather. All right, folks, thanks for joining us. If you are on YouTube, we're going to go into exec in a different meeting session. Thanks. We'll see you all there soon. Thanks to the admin for being here. They don't come into exec with us, but